And welcome back to another episode of Inboxing. I'm your host, Hillel Berg, and today we have an amazing guest. This guy, Andrew Bonar, has been involved in email since 1994. And maybe he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but he's been doing email for a long, long time. Knows a lot about deliverability. Worked for a lot of big brands. And we're really honored that he's here today. And I'll let him tell his story, going back almost 30 years. So without any further ado, please welcome Andrew Bonar. Andrew, welcome to Inboxing.
Hey, Hillel, thanks. And the honor's all mine. Thanks for inviting me onto the show. It's a real pleasure.
For sure. It's the pleasure's really mine, and I really appreciate you coming. So without, spending too much time, without any further ado, let's just jump right into it. So tell us a little bit of your backstory. I know you've been doing email for such a long time. So how did it all begin?
So I fell into the internet for personal reasons. Started using the internet I had a partner that was that had some medical issues, and the easiest way to get the information at the time was via bulletin boards and things. So very, very early days of the internet. And from that experience, I started, I got connected with a guy called Mick Vates, who was well ahead of his time, who was doing networks and networking for huge enterprise organizations, Dow Getty and PIC, PLC, and others, and saw an opportunity there to be able to provide internet access to small and medium-sized businesses. I mean, I've always been, or I'd like to think, I've always been a fighter for the little guy. So it was like great that, these big enterprises had it, but I was like, that there's lots of people that could make use of this. And at the time I was thinking about printers and agencies that were spending a huge amount of money on what were ISDN lines at the time, is what we used to use to transfer files between offices and things. You would pay a fortune to, transfer a 5 meg file or a 50 meg file, even more. And we could do this over the internet via FTP and stuff. And I was like, we could definitely do something here. So, we cooked up a ISP of sorts that people could, that there was only one ISP in the UK at the time, Demon Internet. So we had to take a lease line off them, and we provided internet access. And one of the biggest problems in getting our name out was funds. We didn't have money. We weren't invested. It was bootstrapped. So we had to look at what everyone was using at the time, and it was, for email, because that was the central thing that was bringing people online. So we knew email was important from the very beginning. And we started offering a free email alias service, because everyone at the time had these horrible CompuServe addresses. It was a string of numbers with a couple of commas in there normally. Worse than a phone. CompuServe's logic at the time was people remember phone numbers, so they'll remember these email addresses. We registered pobox.co.uk and started offering people free email aliases, so you could have your name at pobox.co.uk, free for life. And that was, try and work out the year now. It was definitely preceded, Hotmail by several years, but it wasn't a real email service. It was an email alias service, all the same. Mail was coming.
I didn't realize I was muted, but you were coming in and out. Can you pretend? Yeah, the connection is terrible. I'm wondering if you can maybe pause your video. Maybe that would help. Oh, yeah, we've totally lost Andrew. Yeah, it was getting interesting. Yeah, just hearing about those early days, think about what it might have been like to be, have an ISP, offering internet service, but not having funds to really get your name out there. It reminded me a lot of IDT. I was living in New York at that time, and IDT had these like homemade commercials. I'm Jonah. Yeah, I'm Jonah. I forget his name. Jonah Sonis or something. I don't know, something like that. He was a very interesting guy. He went on, to do very well. He ordered IDT. It was like an internet service. I mean, I think at that time, people thought the internet was AOL. If anyone, I don't know who's watching, but if you're watching and you agree about it, you want to talk about this, is interesting. But I remember those days, we all thought the internet was AOL. Like our whole access to the internet went through AOL. And, we don't understand like the breadth of the internet at all until we stopped using AOL, or we just realized that you just need an internet connection and then you can go on a browser and connect. So I'm not sure. We might have to take a rain check on this episode if we can't get Andrew back, but I'm hoping he will be back shortly. Yeah, my internet looks like it might be a little up and down, but it looks like he just totally fell off the rails. Andrew's located in Spain, so I have no idea in that part of Spain what the internet is like. And it was interesting. He actually was talking about high-speed internet at the time that he lost internet. So, yeah, not sure. Yeah, who's out there? I see I got an eyeball. Love to say hello. This is the Inboxing Podcast. Our guest, Andrew Bonar, was here talking about his experience in the really early days of the internet. And then he seemed to lose internet. All right. It's Nellie. Hi, Nellie. Nice to meet you. It's Andrew's wife. And she just informed us that his computer crashed. So he's probably starting up again. He'll be back in a little bit. Until he does come back. Yeah, so it was just interesting. He was talking about high-speed internet and offering high-speed internet without an ISDN line, which I remember ISDN lines wasn't really an option for people at home. So we had broadband. Broadband was like a revolution in home internet, where the cable companies could offer internet. And that was, and then you just had a solid internet connection. Until then, we had all kinds of issues. But I'm glad to see Nellie's here, and she informed me that Andrew should be back shortly, and he could pick up where he left off. I hope when he gets back, try to make sure, Nellie, I know you're listening. So no one should be streaming. I don't want you watching Netflix while he's doing this internet. While he's doing this, try to limit as much bandwidth as you can, so he can get as much bandwidth as possible. But I'm not sure if he lost internet just because his computer crashed, or because it seemed right before it crashed, it was like very choppy, and then it was over. And he's back. All right, so. Without further ado, we're bringing back Andrew Bonar, and he can pick up about the story. You're getting into his story. He's talking about offering internet service to London businesses. That's what I understood. So I'll let him pick it up. Andrew, welcome back to Inboxing. It's all right.
Sorry about that. I've got everything shut down. I don't even have my notes anymore, so everything's going to have to come from the top of my head now because
all right.
Nothing else running. I'll cut that story real short. We were bootstrapped, had no money, wanted to get our name out. So our clever idea of getting the name PO Box out was to offer people free email addresses. People had their own email accounts. They were mostly CompuServe accounts, horrible, ugly email addresses, bunch of numbers at CompuServe.com. So we would give them an alias, your name at pobox.co.uk. Businesses picked that up really pretty quickly. So people got to know us, and it was a great way to get the name out there. And even though we weren't running the mailboxes, at a certain point, there was so much mail, going through our servers, basically, because it was an alias. So we were, accepting the mail and then passing it onto the right mailbox, that we started filtering and blocking mail basically. And that was, it was at that point I had marketers and brands and others reaching out to us and saying like, why is it that, our mail doesn't get delivered when we try and send via PO box? And I was like, well, hey, there's something in this. Email was always, for me, it was chat rooms. So IRC based chat rooms and things and the bulletin boards. So that communication was what drew me into the internet. And a lot of other people at that point in time, that and mugs and other things. But the email was really where you could see practical uses and could start seeing, okay, that there's potential business uses and things here outside of this social part of the internet, which was really what drew me to the internet in the first place, was the social elements and the connecting people and things. And so so that's how I started looking at that, and from there we were like, well, maybe there's something that we can do here about delivering mail better, because there's a whole bunch of things that you guys aren't doing to make it easy for us either. And I'm not even sure if people were talking much around, terms like deliverability or delivery or anything like that. But we started an ESP, and I don't think I even called it an ESP at the time. I don't think that was necessarily a term. That we had Mail Phoenix and Email Genie, and like a lot of businesses I started around that time, they got swallowed up pretty quickly by either one of the biggest customers or a competitor in the space or otherwise. So I've always traditionally been really good at coming up with an idea that I can bootstrap, that I can take to market and get a little bit beyond proof of concept. And maybe my pricing models and other things a lot of the time have stepped on the toes of others, and they've come in and gone like, great idea, brilliant, but can we buy this? And I've always had another half a dozen projects that I wanted to get my teeth into, so it was never really an issue to go, okay, well, we'll let this one go. So yeah, that was how I got into email initially. Was email was always PO Box was the first company that I was a co-founder of. It was the first company that I worked in terms of the internet. So email was central to everything from the beginning. Really, I've tried to get away from it a few times. I went into e-commerce. I started one of the first payment gateways in the UK, e-banks. And again, sold it out. But no matter what I've done, even when I took a few years away and worked as a chef in Australia and New Zealand, great. But I ended up 3 or 4 years later going, that the life in email wasn't actually as hard as I thought it was, as much as I was traveling a lot and doing awful lot of things. But it was a great journey all along the way, and I love to travel, and I suppose I carved a bit of a niche for myself in dealing with regions that other people wouldn't have wanted to, or weren't able to, or weren't prepared to. So I did work in Australia, and I went out to China, and a few other places. So I got a bit of a name for establishing relationships outside of maybe the whole North American thing, which most people were focusing on. But that's how I fell into email. And once email has you, it doesn't let you go, really.
All right, thank you for that. So what is the biggest surprise to you about the current state of email marketing?
Okay, this is a tough question because the answer that comes from my heart, and it's the one that I'm going to give, isn't necessarily the one that my partners in terms of business or sponsors or and I'm not thinking about anyone specifically, but anyone that I know in the industry is necessarily going to be on side with Andrew on this one. And it's certainly not something that we like to talk about. But really, I think we do need to have a conversation around tracking. I think we're being a little bit flippant around. There's so much tracking going on online, and there's so much happening, and emails. The bottom of the barrel is really not that important in the bigger scheme of things. Well, if we're focusing on email and talking about email and talking about our community, well, it's the standard being, hey, compare that to, the retracking pixels or something that, Facebook's running. That shouldn't be the standard we hold ourselves to. So I think there's some, some questions around that. And, I think, and I went to double check because we had this conversation, the other day when I started my ESP. We used to have, if you were an enterprise client, we were able to give you an awful lot of information based on our tracking pixels. And that went beyond just screen resolution and what operating system you were running. There was quite a lot of information that Microsoft in particular was prepared to give back to you as a result of asking for a web beacon from you. But even today, you can see screen resolutions, you can see all sorts of things. I haven't checked whether or not you can go for a full device fingerprint, probably not via an email, but there's a lot that you can do in the tracking stuff, and we don't talk about it very much. And just because if you go to MailChimp or whoever, they're only giving you opens and clicks, that isn't necessarily just the level of data that enterprises might be accessing. And then when you look at things like Litmus, and I love the product, don't get me wrong, and I've recommended it to clients, don't get me wrong either. Someone that's wanting to do a good email marketing program, I'm like, get something like Litmus, get something like Email on Acid that's going to tell you what people are using to access your emails, so that you can work out whether or not it's worth investing, whether it's a day or a week or a month of time in optimizing for iPhone. Let's find out if anyone's actually using iPhone. But at the same time, my own personal feelings on all things around the internet, I'm very pro the privacy aspects and very pro, the ability to a certain extent to have anonymity on the internet and stuff. So I think that conversation needs to be had. I'm not saying necessarily Hey.com have approached it the right way, but we shouldn't have been caught with our pants down, and I think we have this year. So BBC in the UK did a big article. I think the headline was tracking an email is endemic or something like that. And for the conversation to have been driven by Hey.com and and BBC to cover it the way they did, that was because we were prepared to look the other way, and never really address it. So my hats go off to a few ESPs, and there aren't many. One that comes to mind is based in Ireland in the EU, SenderPro. So SenderPro, was one of the first that I know that reached out to me and said, hey, that stuff that you're sometimes tweeting about, I haven't been that vocal about it, around privacy tracking and privacy pixels and the rest of it within emails. We actually have that as an option that, our customers can turn that on and off.
Okay, that's a step.
ESP should at least make that an option, or at least be a little bit more explicit with the users and the rest of it. I just think, I'm just surprised that we didn't tackle that earlier. So that's, for me, surprising, but maybe not the most interesting thing for.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting because you're actually the very first person. This is episode 8. We've talked about a lot of things, but this has never come up, and it's definitely an issue. That's close to a lot of people's hearts. About the amount of information you could pull from someone clicking and open on an email. So I'm glad you brought it up because even to me, I never really thought about it as like invasion of privacy, but especially when you consider how much data, the big data, you can collect so much data from Facebook and everything. Like they know your email address. They can tie it to everything. Like they know everything about you.
Yeah. I think people are shocked, and I'm like, no, in all my clients, images are off. I don't see images. I don't view images. And it's very rare that I'll turn around and say, turn images on for this email. And I know I'm a small subset of people, but when people start to read articles like that, it won't be long before there's a great number of people doing that. I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. I'm not saying it's necessarily bad or has to go away or has to die completely, but it's a conversation that should be had. And if we address things internally as an industry, then we're not going to have external forces, legislating, because the legislation comes around from when we allow bad habits to become, well, bad practices to become bad habits.
Right. It's interesting. I think you could sort of drive. You're in a unique position. We'll get to why, but because you run conferences, like you could set up a session about this topic. Like you
Yeah,
said, this is
so
what we want to talk about.
we're moving more towards trying to have the conversation. So, it's only our second year doing conferences in email and as email expert. So yeah, we're moving towards more having the kind of conversations we'd like, that I would have liked to have heard when I was going through the industry. So, the type of content that I would have liked to have been able to refer my clients to, I'm trying to get that up on stage so that, other people have content to refer to. So things like the Spam House, change.org case study, where Spam House blocklisted change.org very, very recently. So the founder of Spam House and the head of deliverability for change.org will be on stage talking about how they got listed, why they got listed, why it was a good thing for change.org, and why going through that process meant their email program is much healthier, much stronger for it today. I've had so many conversations with the C-suite at Marcom companies or marketers, and Spam House and Serval and all of those block lists. Those are the enemy, and can we sue them? Can we shut them down? Can we, all kinds of conspiracy theories and everything else. And I've always said, they are our best friend. The block lists are why we have a job. And the reason why we're able to do email marketing is because they exist. And if anything you're asking me is how do we make a donation to them so they can do it better? Because otherwise, mailboxes are finished. And I've never seen, anyone brand side that was prepared to put themselves forward and say, we've been blocked. This is what happened. We messed up because, Spam House don't block anyone by mistake. And in my experience, Spam House never, or, there's been occasions where there's been problems with the returns, the SPL codes, they've returned or whatever for a couple of hours, but that's, everyone impacted. And, it's not, but, if you've particularly been listed, if it is an error, then it gets sorted out pretty quickly. And in my experience, it's the market has done something that needs to change. So yes, I've never had someone be able to, or I've never had someone that I could point to have a look at this webinar, or have a look at this case study, or have a look at this document. It's only been this is my assertion, this is what I believe, and it's great, but it's always just one person's opinion. So it's really nice to have Alice Cornell and Simon Forster. So Alice Cornell from change.org and Simon Forster, who's the CEO and founder of Spam House, actually coming on stage to do this. And that session we're actually going to release under copyleft or similar. So that's going to be free for the community. So obviously we need to pay bills, but at the same time, some of the stuff that we're producing isn't something that should be restricted to paying delegates or have you. So interested in trying to move things forward. That's really where I'm at now is, okay, maybe some people are like, Andrew, shouldn't have said that about, tracking pixels, or why did you say that about bimmy? Because I think, someone saying it means it might change in the right direction. And I think that's, good for all of us, even if it's, painful process on the way.
Okay. I'm just interested because you just mentioned bimmy. And I think it's been coming up a lot lately as a good thing. So where do you see the dark side of it?
No, so there really is no dark side to bimmy.
Okay.
But people
can you just explain what it is for the listeners?
Sure. So the at the moment, if you authenticate your mail properly, if you put DMARC in place and actually put a so DMARC is a domain
authentication.
So it's an authentication method. So it's essentially enables receivers to check with you whether or not you are expecting a specific mail server to be sending mail. So, is this mail really from brand X? And it's a way of cross-checking with brand X whether that's the case. And if not, if it's not, mail that brand X has said, we're sending, brand X can request that the receiver treats it in a certain way, including rejecting it or quarantining it by putting it in spam. So it gives you as a brand an extra layer of control as to how receivers treat mail that might not be coming from you. So it's a great way of securing your mail streams. And bimmy is, the next level up from that. If you get your DMARC right and you get your authentication right, the way I see it is it's a little gold badge from specific mailbox providers, and there's not many of them at the moment. It's just it's AOL, Verizon, Yahoo that have it at the moment, and Gmail in pilot. But more and more will undoubtedly take it on board. And then what happens is next to your sender from name, you get your logo showing. And so the downside of the bimmy that some people are, there's a discussion around the costs involved in bimmy and how accessible it might be. So the current, and it's all in pilot, so you can't make judgments based on what's happening in pilot because they haven't said what's happening, what really will happen in 2 months or 3 months. So I'm expecting lots of changes. But there was a time where it was looking like it might be very expensive to get a VMC, which is the other element to the bimmy, which is so bimmy is brand identified marker, something like that, and the VMC is your verified mark certificate, which would allow you in the pilot program to have your logo displayed in Gmail. Now the VMC requires a payment to a third party to actually process the licensing, and also requires you that they will require you to have some way of proving that this logo that you want to display is yours. And it looks like that's going to be via the US Patent Office, and having a trademark logo there. So great maybe for US businesses, North American businesses, an extra hurdle for anyone outside of North America potentially. But this is the pilot program, and probably everyone in the pilot is in North America, so we don't know what they're doing next. But certainly there was a lot of 6 months ago and 4 months ago and 3 months ago, there was a lot of high prices being quoted, or at least I had rumors of high prices being quoted for the VMC. But the last conversations I had, and literally this week, it was pushing into the 5 figures, but barely pushing into 5 figures for getting into the VMC, which seems much more reasonable. But this isn't the bimmy project. You have to separate the bimmy project, which is doing this brand identifier, this brand identifying mark, and conversations with Matt recently, who's on the committee and stuff. It sounds like they've got much bigger plans for this than just email. So this being a way of any brand having a central resource. Okay, this is our official logo, and potentially Twitter could pull it in, Facebook could pull it in, your web pages could pull it in, because this is a central resource for, this is definitely the logo that belongs to this organization. So that's really interesting. So yeah, no dark side to bimmy, I'm afraid.
Okay.
An awful lot of rumors and half truths, because nobody really knows the truth of it, and those that do know are on the committees, and they're not able to disclose what hasn't been fully decided yet.
Made public.
Yeah. But yeah, I've got high hopes for bimmy being. I have high hopes from working out something that means small and medium-sized businesses will maybe medium-sized businesses will be able to get their bimmy logos accredited. So the whole idea is just trying to get companies to send mail better, to authenticate better, and then give them something at the end of it. That's how I see it, because really that's all it is. It's a shiny logo inside the mailbox, but marketers can love that. And if you can get marketing to push on something, it's an awful lot easier than other departments to make changes. So IT turning around and saying we should invest time and money to authenticate our mail better, probably isn't going to have as much why, and how does it help us? No, it doesn't help us, it helps the receivers. But when marketing turns around and says no, we're going to have a marketing win here, then there's more likelihood to have budget and time. So, and this is just my take on it, that some brilliant geeks sat back and went, okay, how the hell do we get marketers to do things properly? Shiny badge, give them a shiny badge. And in my opinion, it's brilliant. That's probably, or it's definitely an oversimplification. And the guys on the Bimmy project would probably hang me for saying so. But from my perspective, the shiny badge to make brands send better mail and do things better was a sheer piece of brilliance.
Okay. All right, let's go back a little bit. So growing up, you mentioned you moved around a lot. So how did that, inform on your career and help you get to where you are now?
Yeah, I was born in the Middle East, dragged around the Middle East a fair bit, and then across Europe and stuff. So I mean, it really upset me the first time I remember the first time I was dragged out of school and told, dragged out of school, melodramatic. But yeah, get home from school and being told you're not going back next term, and we're moving to a new country, and you might have to learn a new language. It really upset me the first time. It really, really upset me. And leaving, and when I got to wherever was the next on the trip, I didn't make friends, and I was just like, well, no, I'm not going to go through that again. That was all from how long we're going to be here, and it wasn't long for mum and dad were like, no, we're moving again. So by the time by the time I got to Cyprus, I was like, look, this is crazy. I just need to make friends, otherwise I'm just going to be this loner. So I realized that I'm not going to be around for long. So like, oh, we're in Cyprus, but it's only going to be for like 18 months or something. I was like, well, I need to make good buddies real fast. So it was just like, leave yourself exposed, try and earn trust. And I learned that I learned really early on that if you want someone to trust you, then you need to leave yourself vulnerable to them. And so I'm a little bit of an open book. Share, people regularly tell me you share more information than you need to. You're a little bit more open about what's going on and stuff than you need to be. That's a legacy from growing up and having to or wanting to establish those relationships quickly. That and having to adapt to changing cultures and ways of doing things and everything else fits in perfectly with email. Nothing's the same every day in email. And I suppose I leveraged that for, going, well, I'm not scared to go to China. That was something that was really exciting for me, whereas everyone else in the company was just like, seriously, Andrew, seriously? And I was like, if we want to go to, if we want to be in China, someone needs to go to China, right? So I was perfectly, I was excited by, a 3-week trip out there. So I think being sensitive to cultural and just other ways of doing things, and because I went from liberal Middle Eastern countries to far less liberal to European, to London, which was a huge culture shock for me at 11. Like I was just like, whoa, what is all this about? And London, I think, taught me a lot as well. So that was into the thick of an urban big city when, that was nothing that I'd been used to. And 11 years old in the rough and tumble of Brixton, it was like, okay, you need to have your wits about you and make some real good friends real quick. So those are lessons that I, applied to email. I try and be sensitive to where people are coming from, what their backgrounds might be, and treat people as people. And sometimes my conversations waffle a little bit with clients and partners and everyone else, because I really think it's important to get to know who they are before we do anything else. But that pays well, pays dividends for me. And more than anything, email's international, and or the part of email that I work with is very international as opposed to focusing locally. And so that's served me in good stead there, I suppose. Not worried about going on stage in Russia or China or Israel or wherever it might be.
All right, that definitely was informative. All right, moving back to PO Box. So yeah, you told us about, how you're collecting email addresses, and that really got you your first start there. So where that take you? Like, why did you come out with that from there?
I know I wrote an answer for you here, but when I've read the question there like that, it's come back to me that no, actually everything that I learned at PO Box, and this is probably more important for anyone listening that wants to get into anything, because Mick Bates was brilliant, absolute disaster at human interaction, but as a person, as a brain, Mick Bates is absolutely brilliant. And he basically sat me down and was like, there's not much that you need to know, because if you know these basics, then you know everything. And I never really, haven't reflected on that. DNS, the domain name system, and how that works, absolutely essential. As soon as you can understand domain names and IPs and how all that works, that is the fundamental building block of the internet, and understanding that will always pay you dividends. And in email, when it comes to bimmy or DMARC or SPF or anything, all those are little records in the DNS system. So understand the DNS and you're flying. If you understand the fundamentals of the DNS, and when it comes to adding a record, whether it's SPF or any of the other authentication records, you're miles ahead of where you need to be. The other thing was, and this might scare people, but it was Unix for Dummies. So he got me a copy of Unix for Dummies and said, you need to understand it. And Unix for Dummies, it's not that far from, I suppose maybe some of the listeners wouldn't have had the Spectrum. I had a ZX Spectrum, that was what was given to me to learn. It wasn't that far from the programming there. Unix is really obvious. I mean, if you can get the basics of that, then HTML and everything else, and you don't need to be a coder, but just to be able to look at that and go, okay, I understand what's happening there. That was the other thing that he did. And beyond that, Mick talked about the future of the internet, and what do I wish more than anything was that I had absolute confidence in it, because he used to talk about the high street network. So he used to tell me that, more shopping was going to be done via the internet than was going to be done on the high street. And he's like, it's the high street network. Really, the internet is going to come into its own when we have the high street network. He kept talking about the online high street network, And I was just like, how's it going to work? It's like, you can have stores, you can go in there, you're going to buy stuff. That is not going to end. He's like, you are your milk, your eggs, your food. And I was like, what are you talking about here? And then he was like, your clothes, Andrew, everything is going to be. This was 1995, 1996.
Right. It wasn't like imaginable. Like,
like, Mick, you're going to have businesses doing business on the internet. I can see how that's going to work. I can see how this is going to work. And I was all about, let's get this. So we had chat.org.uk. Let's get this chat room up, and we, charge people $3 a year to be able to chat to their friends in whichever communities they want and things. He's like, yeah, cool idea. It's not serious. And he kept talking about the high street network, and that's how we ended up with eBanks. So if anything, it would be to listen to those people that seem, if someone's really, really smart, and they're telling you something that just doesn't seem to make sense, but in your heart of hearts that they are super smart, maybe listen to them a little bit more and pay a bit more attention, because they'll just be super seriously ahead of their time. So I probably missed a couple of things there, and now I spend a little bit more time listening to there's lots of smart people around you, and people aren't necessarily giving them as much time as they might do, because they don't necessarily express themselves brilliantly. And that's what, another thing about Mick, he wasn't a social person. He wasn't someone that I could take to meetings to meet the clients, but without him, there was nothing. Pay attention to the people around you. They might be holding some diamonds for you.
All right, it's a good life lesson, I think.
But the main thing is for key learnings would be make sure you know the basics of the internet, the DNS, how it works. Just the fundamentals is really important. And then if email is important to you, then just, understand the protocols, SMTP, POP3, IMAP, just there isn't that many of them. And I'm not saying you have to go off and read all the RFCs and understand them back to front. But yeah, remember there are RFCs, and understand that, these rules aren't made up by a company, that they didn't come out of thin air, but understand the process that, this is why email is the way it is. So when you turn around and say email's broken and, this needs to change, do you understand the process of where we got to have, this universal ubiquitous system on the internet that, it is pretty much unbreakable. It's not Facebook, it's not Twitter, nobody else owns it, you own your channel. There was a lot that took took us to get to that point. And there's a huge process, and there's huge organizations that actually invest a lot of time, and volunteers that invest a lot of time and effort in getting there and understanding those processes, and understanding just the fact that there's RFCs, and how that applies to the internet and also email is I think fundamental to being able to go above the day-to-day of how do I get the most return from the next email and stuff. Is how does this work? Because then you understand the limitations of the channel that you're working in and why those limitations exist as well. So
all right, thank you. So what that, I mean, I think you kind of covered this before, but where did you go from there? Was that like the startup era? Like you just starting companies?
So there's a lot of startups. Then we had the .com, the
boom
bubble burst. So the bubble burst for me in a pretty pretty dramatic way. So we were actually closing on the sale of eBanks that day. The day, I think it was boo.com, and then 3 others crashed. So we were there in the offices. There was the Europeans, there was the lines open to the Japanese investors, and the North American investors, and we could hear what was going on in the conference room next door. Didn't know what was going on. And then Mick passed me his Nokia, these text updates and stuff, and he's like, it's not looking good. And things just started crashing. And they called us in and was like, okay, the Japanese have pulled, and then half an hour later, the Americans have pulled, and the deal that was worth millions the day before was just like having noughts taken off it, like by the minute. It was just like, what do we get right now? And it was just like, a bunch of shares and a payout, and we're like, let's just take it now. And we took that. And I think if we'd hung out for another hour, then there would have been no noughts left on the check that we got. So I was pretty annoyed because we could see it all happening and we weren't overvalued, and it wasn't crazy. What we were doing was fantastic. So we had an e-payment gateway where we weren't charging a percentage, and we're in 2021 now, and there still isn't a payment gateway that's offering that. So we offered.
How are you able to do that? If the whole world is still doing it.
Anyone could do it, and they could do it today if they wanted to. And if PayPal wanted to do it, they could do it, and I don't care. Any of those guys wanted to do it, they could do it. It's very, very simple. So if you understand, in a store, you get the machine from the bank, and therefore you're only paying the bank percentage fee. Yeah. So if you go into Debenhams or Marks and Spencers or wherever it might be that you do your shopping, swipe your card, that machine's tied directly to the bank. As an e-commerce provider, you do the same thing. You take a lease line to the bank, and you're no longer paying for a phone call or for a connection charge. And the bank is charging you, I don't know today, they were charging a flat rate. If you wanted to take a permanent connection for transferring your things, they were charging a flat rate. So you got a fixed cost. You also knew, what the maximum number of transactions you'd be able to push through, a single line was. And you could therefore work out what the base cost was for running. So we were charging a monthly service fee, which covered our costs. So the monthly service fee from the customers meant that we were running at 0 costs, and then charging 1 cent a transaction just seemed like as much as we could possibly charge, considering that 1 cent was pure profit. And so, we said we didn't care whether the basket was $100 or $1,000. What we were really annoyed about, and what we were really, really trying to achieve wasn't let's disrupt the market and not charge a percentage. That wasn't the aim. What we were trying to get to was micropayments. That was what we really wanted to get to. We wanted to get to micropayments, so that you could pay 1/100th of a cent for being a web page, and that's where we wanted to get to, but it was way too early for talking about micropayments and fractions of a penny and stuff. But that was what was driving us, and always, CheapNet was the other ISP that we launched. So at the time, people were told they couldn't have a quality service of internet for less than, it's called TAM, tenner a month. So it was £10 a month. Anything less than that, I think it was someone from one of the associations, maybe the Internet Association in the UK or something, actually went on stage and said, it's not technically possible to deliver quality service for less than £10 a month. And that was just like a red rag to a bull to Mick. And he was like, we need to be doing it at 4. And I was like, not 5. And he was like, no, 4. It needs to be less than half the price. And that was just his mission. So he'd get things like that. And, ISPs at the time were rated by .NET Magazine, and we were, top 3 consistently for, the 3 years that we were operating, and at less than 50% of the cost. So cutting prices has always been another thing that we like to do. But it's not, it doesn't come at no cost. So we didn't offer support. So you don't get the support, and we were very open about that. Go to AOL, learn how to use the internet, get up to speed, and then when you want the real internet, give us a call and we can give you access. So went all around the houses, and then ended up at Email Vision. So I was doing consultancy for a while for a lot of brands that I liked. So I was working all over the place, brand in Australia, brand in London, and got a little bit of a name for myself because around that time was probably when I started hearing the term deliverability. And I was like, and people were also telling me, because I had my hand in so many things, e-commerce, web development, converting, taking businesses from offline to online, also the email. People were like, you need to niche, you need your niche, Andrew, you need your niche, otherwise, you're just a jack of all trades. So I went off and I was like, okay, deliverability is my niche. And people were just like, and this was internet people, and I was just like, what is that? And I was like, oh, sorry, it's email, but it's this final mile component. And they were like, when we said niche, you could have just gone with email. And I was like, well, no, you said niche. So I was like, niche, it's deliverability. And I remember, looking on LinkedIn, I think there was less than 20 people that maybe had deliverability anywhere in their description. It was just like you could search deliverability and get everyone. And there was people like Al and there was lots of people at the time that were definitely firmly in the deliverability space. I followed them and was like, okay, well, deliverability, that's my thing. I suppose I was doing delivery and deliverability and wasn't calling it deliverability. Then I started doing deliverability. And once I did that niche advice, probably also great advice for anyone listening is, find your niche, and find what you love and do it for as long as, it's right for you. I changed and we can talk about that in a bit. But yes, deliverability, and that's when Email Vision, I think, started to notice me and asked me whether it was, I'd join them. I can't hear you. Are you on silent? Are you on mute?
I put myself on mute because there was a big truck going behind me, playing a lot of music. So I was asking, what did the tech landscape look back then, and when is back then? What year are we talking about now?
When I started, we had Alta Vista. I remember that. So that was our search engine. That was the first search engine that I remember that we started using, and before that, you just need to know where you were going. So I in my head, it was pre-Google, post-Google, and now there's I suppose something else that's going to be coming. Facebook. No, Facebook didn't even really register.
I think we're probably talking about like 2002, 2003, something like that.
It was. It was before Google. Microsoft was the bad guy. Everyone hated Microsoft, and it was like, how can we do things not using Microsoft, and it wasn't hard because ASP was awful. Pure HTML and CGI was definitely the way to go if you wanted to do, like, Perl was definitely the way to go if you wanted to do anything fun. There was more available in some ways to marketers than there is today in terms of tracking and stuff, because there was no knowledge or anything about privacy and stuff. There was it was a lot more left or right. It was black or white. There was no in between in terms of your mail being delivered. It was very knee-jerk type reactions. So yeah, word filters and that type of thing were much more important. In other ways, I think it was a lot more exciting, and there was a lot of things that was super interesting to me at the time, because there was none of the awareness around security, there was none of the awareness around privacy and the other things. It wasn't uncommon to get to a site and be told, like, you're gonna have to wait 40 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, whatever it was, for the Flash or the Macromedia or whatever it was to load. And it, websites weren't the same. There wasn't 15 types of formats. There was very, very different things going on. I remember people like Digit were doing things which were just like really weird to me at the time, because it wasn't a standard, navigation interface. It was this 3D thing where you'd have to drag something on the screen. This was years and years ago. And he was like, this is going to be the future, because you're not going to have to download the Macromedia. Everyone's going to have it on their computer and things. And some of that's gone away, and I understand why, for accessibility reasons and all the rest of it. But some of those, the Maverick early days, and the ability to launch something and get it out there with no budget, it's a little bit harder today, and it's not so much of a flat playing field, I don't think. The opportunities are still there, and maybe I'm just getting older, and the younger generation.
For sure, it's always, you're right. I also kind of always feel like that was a missed opportunity. But there's always opportunities, and
absolutely, absolutely. And but I think my days of starting up, something amazing and new, and being the first to market, I would think I've put those behind me. But first to market, and the first payment provider, the first free email service, the first this, the first that, that was easy, to be the first. And now, I suppose you just need to go out there and try and be the best.
Right. Now it's really about reinventing things that already exist.
And I'm sure there's new things coming, but I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, look what's happened in the last year, because of Corona. Like now, virtual conferencing has become a huge thing. I mean, you're the first to do that, probably.
By chance. Well, first in email to be doing a virtual conference. But that was by chance, and poor timing or good timing, or however you want to.
Right. Well, that leads us nicely to the next question. So how did you end up starting to make conferences, with Email Expert and all that? So before that, even.
Before that, the first time I ever had anything to do with a conference was 2004, and my dad was based there in Russia, and he had the MR, the Marketing Russia Awards, and the Moscow advertising balls. That was a huge affair, but I wasn't hands-on. I wasn't there on the ground in Moscow. I was basically the European contact. I was liaising with sponsors mostly, and organizing some of the international speakers and that type of thing for the awards ceremony and event. But that was pretty much it. And then I wanted to launch Email Expert. I don't know, I think maybe 12 years ago. And there's a gentleman called Fred Tabsharani, who used to be the head of Power MTA, or the public face of Power MTA, which is now a Spot Post product. But at the time, it was their own product. It was Power MTA, and he was the industry relations for that product. And he was like, hey, this blog that you're launching sounds really good and stuff, and what you want to do is have like a little event off that to try and get people in the industry interested in what you're doing in your blog and stuff. And he was like, we'd be happy to give you a few $100 to pay for the drinks for that to happen. And so, yeah, we held our first networking event, off the back of launching to launch Email Expert. And that was around the same time as the DMA had a conference. And we just basically did this. It was a bit cheeky. They had this conference, and then we basically said, look, there's this VIP after event cocktail drinks that we're inviting like 50 industry people to, and it was very well attended. And yeah, so that was how we got Email Expert off the ground the first time. And then every time we've tried to make another push with Email Expert over the years, it's always been like some kind of small event. So we did an event in Sydney with Digital and Alchemy Works, maybe 70 or 80 people, but that wasn't a conference. It's always been networking events. We did another one at the Presidential Suite in the W in New York. That was a really cool party for Valentine's Day, the day before Valentine's. So traditionally, Email Expert launched officially on February the 14th for the love of email and the rest of it. So we've done those, and then we were doing Email Expert this time properly. So we've got a new, it was 10 years to find the right co-founder. So the longest startup in history, the longest startup story in history. It was registered as a .org, never registered as a business. And found my wife and co-founder because she had similar interests and had complementary skills to me. We were at several events in the US and Europe where we felt things had been messed up a little bit, and we're like, we could do this better one day. One day we could do this better. There's a lovely couple, I'll not name them, that run one of the biggest, most lavish email conferences. They were in their 60s at the time, 10 years ago. I don't know if they still attend the events that they organize, but they're brilliant. And we looked at them and they're like, they have a nice life. Like one day we'd like to be doing these events, because they spent 3 months of the year going and finding the next location and then organizing this huge event around it. And we're like, and they have quite a nice life. And one day, not in the too distant future, those two are going to be retiring, and maybe that's something that we can do. That crossed our mind. And then, we decided to do emailexpert.com properly. We registered the business. Nelly is the managing director. So we registered in the UK in 2019. We got the support of Spark Post and Netcore, Paper Post at the time. They both wrote 6-figure checks, 5-figure checks, big checks, based on an idea, a concept, and nothing else. So, eternally grateful to those guys for doing that. And we were like, hey, we need to do this properly. We need to do like a proper event, and this time a conference, not just like a social gathering. And it was supposed to only be, I think we had planned 5 hours to be held at my brother's venue, because my brother has a venue in South London. And that was all we started with. And then there was a couple of speakers that said, look, we'd love to speak for you, but there's no chance we're going to go and talk in East Croydon. So if you can find yourself a central London location, we'd be happy to do that. So it grew from there, and then we ended up having like this fabulous location by the Shard in London, this fabulous art gallery for the after event. So everything was all on for March 2020, and we had 75 speakers flying into London. And one of the ideas that we had really early on in probably December was, hey, not everyone can, rock up to London, and, we can't, and in reality, we couldn't afford to pay the deposit on any kind of venue that was going to hold more than 250 people. So, we need to pay the deposits on that. We need to pay the deposits on the catering, the food, everything else. And we're like, we can't, great speakers, probably, maybe 500 people would show up for this. But in all honesty, we can't afford to risk more than this. But we can't afford to risk more than everything. And it's 200 people. That's it. There is no more. So that's what we did. And we were like, well, maybe we could get people to join us online, and maybe we could sell some tickets online. And that's how we discovered Hopin, which is this online events or hybrid events platform. And they were very, very new. They'd only, launched or registered their business a few months before us at the time. And watching Johnny and their just had stratospheric growth. To think we both started in London, really, really similar. And they decided to go after VC money, and I was like, no, we don't want VC money. They're valued at 2 billion now. But yeah, so we got to know the team at Hopin, and they had this like amazing online events platform. So we were just incredibly lucky, basically, to have
the right people.
The right people to maybe this is a cool idea. Let's get a Hopin license. And for then, when COVID happened, COVID was obvious, and we knew we had to cancel the event. It wasn't that hard because we already had planned to do everything online anyway, and now we just need to circle back with the speakers and find out which ones were still prepared to do it, but to do it online. And it was a very novel idea at the time. Nobody had been doing it, so they were like, well, why not? And yeah, it worked, and we got a lot of positive feedback, and people were like, you're going to do it again? And we were like, yeah, but properly next time. And COVID continued, and the story unraveled, and we were like, okay, let's do that. And people asked us to do more events. We did the Canadian Email Summit. So Canadian Email Summit said, look, we want to have this online again. You've already done it online. Would you be able to, support us in this? So we helped them with that. And then, others commissioned us to do Deliverability Summit and other events for ourselves, but with them as sponsors. So yeah, we continue to do it. And yeah, I think leading into your next question, why? Yeah.
Oh, that was the same question. Oh, no. Well, what question were you thinking of?
Yeah. So I was thinking.
I think maybe you're talking about. You wanted to talk maybe about this.
No, we can do that too, though. Yeah, it was just like I've understood that. My point in my career, what I want to do, I've always liked connecting people and helping and telling stories and getting other people to tell stories and all the rest of it. And at this point, like I said, I haven't got the energy to, start a SaaS platform and build out a team of, 100 programmers and stuff. And I think there's other people that have got brilliant ideas and will be doing that. And why I'm doing this now is I think I've found my niche. I've got, contacts that I can bring in some big names. So that people are drawn to the events and things, but also give new speakers an opportunity and a stage and an audience where people are going to be there because of the other people that are there as well. And yeah, I think conferences and emailexpert.com, the platform itself, is just an awesome opportunity to make the best use of my skills and try and move more into the shadows and help other people tell their story. And that's really what I want to do. So I really enjoy coming on the show and talking to you, and I love talking on stage. But I'm finding more and more often when someone's asking me, will you do this, I'm like, would you think about her or him, because they've got a lot to add on this subject. At the moment, I really need to promote Inbox Expo. We really need as much support as possible. So my boss has told me that you will do every show that somebody invites you to. But it was a special honor to be invited here. Favorite industry people? That's a crazy question. I get shot if there's so many. So the first answer is go to the site and see everyone that's spoken this year and last year, because those, they are all friends, and they are all people that I owe a huge debt of gratitude to. It'd be way easier for you to ask me a question like, who do you prefer to get drunk with? Who's your favorite person to have coffee with? Who's your favorite person to fly with? Alyssa from Adobe is the best person to have as a surprise passenger next to you on a plane. So she sought me out one day on a flight. I'm not sure if it was from Europe to the US, and she's like, I heard you're Andrew Brown, I'm the deliverability guy. Yeah, I'm the deliverability guy from Adobe, and let's change seats and chat. And it was the most amazing chat. She's so personable, so lovely. And what would have been a very boring 8-hour flight was a lot of fun. Best person for having a natter with is Elliot Ross from Taxi for Email. So no alcohol, nothing needed, just good natter. Elliot Ross, people that I love listening to. I love listening to. You just had her on your show, actually.
Oren Meyer?
Yeah,
Oh, Kath. Or Kath.
yeah. And Kath Pay, I love listening to. Did you have Kath Pay on your show?
Yeah, she was here episode 5.
Okay, cool. So yeah, Cafe, I love listening to. I love listening to Lauren Meyer. And who else? We're gonna, yeah, really, I'm gonna refer back to all of those people that speak for us. And then there's other people, and no, that's not fair because I've got some people that just won't speak and don't speak and stuff. Heather Noonan Hargroves is head of deliverability at Campaign Monitor. She joined the team as possibly support. And when I was leaving Campaign Monitor, I was like, if you want, my bets on, who should be filling the role of deliverability, it's definitely Heather. And she's one of my favorite people because I know what she's done with the team. I know the people around her love her, and she's very similar to me and exposes herself way too much. And I'm hoping one day she'll want to speak. In the meantime, she's currently one of my favorite people in email, Heather. But yeah, there's every day. And Tom Bleliven, I don't know if I've got his name right or not, but Tom, for whatever reason, has decided to sacrifice a significant portion of his life in helping me. So he's helped me with some awesome content on the site, but more recently he's turned around and created a whole Dutch day within Inbox Expo. So there's going to be a whole stream of speakers and an entire day delivered in Dutch. Hasn't asked for a penny for his time, declined to be an affiliate, just said he wants to do it to help. So Tom, best buddies right now. Who is going to be you're going to be hearing about a lot more about in this year. So she took a little bit of time off because she got married and had a baby, but she was at Marketing Land and Martech before that. She was one of their top editors and writers and things, and she's joined our team, and I'm super stoked about that. And I know that we're going to do some brilliant things with Jennifer Cannon. So yeah, follow her on Twitter.
Oh, I've known Jennifer actually. She we did in the very beginning of Conan. You'll love this cast. It was me, Skip Fedora, Jen Cannon, Emily McGuire, and Elliot Ross. We did a little panel discussion about COVID.
That's a good guy to get messed up with, but just make sure there's no cameras around. But yeah, definitely one of my favorite people to get messy with, because he no rules, no rules with Skip. So yeah, fantastic character.
All right, awesome. All right, I think we're pretty much out of time, so I'll just give you a window for your final thoughts. You can freestyle.
I don't know. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm really keen to find out more about what you're doing and stuff. To be honest, my thoughts. Thanks for anyone that's bothered to stay till the end. I'm not sure who wants to listen to me, but yeah, I hope there's been some value there. If there's anything that I can do for anyone, I'm in that stage where I want to pay it forward, pay it back. Email's been really good to me. I wouldn't have got to where I am without people. There's too many to mention. I don't want to. If I start saying that, then it's name and
it sounds like you're winning an Oscar.
So I don't. But if I can help you, or you see something that I'm doing, and you're like, hold on a minute, and why I have 5 minutes or something, you can. So if there's something that we're doing, and you want to be there, it's not based on people spending money with us. If you want to share content, if you want us to share your content on the site or otherwise, you want to get your business listed, if you're in the email space, something somewhere that we're doing, we have got an opportunity for trying to promote and elevate your message. Just reach out to me, because we're open to that, and just want to try and help at this point.
Really appreciate that.
And the only other thing is, if you know, the only payback I'm wanting is more delegates to Inbox Expo. So if you can expense it or charge it back to the business, it's a perfectly legitimate business expense to appear at Inbox, you know, to come to Inbox Expo. If you can't, then reach out to me, because nobody's not coming because they can't afford a ticket. So, you know, we will look after you. Reach out to us. I'm hoping most people can, expense this, and we can try and keep the lights on a little bit longer.
All right, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Andrew. You've been a fantastic guest. And
one last thing, my partners just waved. For your guests for the next 24 hours, Hillel 50, Hillel in capitals 50, 50% off all prices.
All right. All right, I really appreciate that. Well, I'll put that in the Facebook post after this also. Facebook and LinkedIn. So look for that, and you can reshare it. All right, have a great one. You know, yeah. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
And that's our episode for today. I've been Hillel Berg. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us today. And till next time. I don't know who's coming next time, but definitely it should be great. Have a great one, guys.